A viewer wrote in the other week to tell me he saw me filming drive-by shots and what's that cool new BMW? Dude, you've just insulted the people that gave us the guillotine. This is the DS9.
The DS was, of course, the model designation of an innovative Citroen produced from 1955 to 1975. Almost 35 years later, Citroen introduced a luxury sub-brand called DS, and in 2010 the Citroen DS3 was launched as the first luxury model. It was followed by the DS4 and DS5. In 2015, during the DS5 facelift, the DS brand was separated from Citroen, and all current models are called DS and a number indicating the car's place in the model range.
The DS9 is, as the name suggests, the flagship limousine, sitting above the DS7 Crossback SUV. DS9 is actually a replacement for the Citroen C6. A fun fact, the C6, DS5 and DS7 were used or are still used for the French head of state, and at the time of recording this, the DS9 is yet to be selected for presidential duty. I imagine the car is so new there was no time to make the armored version, or the fact that it is made exclusively in China could have something to do with it.
Before I open the wide rear door, briefly about design features the DS is full of. As you approach the car, the headlights do this pretty dance to welcome you. The same feature was used on the DS7 Crossback. If I owned one of these cars, I'd park it in a way so that I could see this welcome every day. Other DS models have a line running along the middle of the bonnet, but the DS9 has a long chrome trim running from the DS badge to the windscreen, further emphasizing this model's prestige. Like on the DS7 Crossback, also here the rear lamps have a diamond pattern, again very pleasing to the eye. And like on the DS3 Crossback, also here the door handles pop out as you approach the car, however the implementation seems to be better. Maybe once or twice the handles didn't pop out when I expected them to, but if you have a chauffeur, they will make sure the door is always ready for you.
Another interesting detail are the amber lights here on the C-pillar. It's a reference to the cone-shaped indicator light on the original DS19. Unfortunately, in the DS9, it's just a design feature, not a real indicator. And this is where the external features and the quirks begin. For example, the chrome window frame is a three-piece job rather than a single piece like, say, on the Jaguar XF. Aesthetics aside, the more pieces to align, the more difficult it is to make them aligned, I guess.
The boot can be opened with gesture, it seems to work every time, and that's a plus. The boot volume is up to 510 liters regardless of the powertrain, but the focal hi-fi system and power tailgate mechanism cut the space to 473 liters. Also, on a rainy day, water from the tailgate drips down the hinges towards the electrical mechanism. And the water collects on the bumper as well, because there is not a single drain hole. So if you need to reach something deep from inside the boot, you'll end up with a wet patch in the most unfortunate of places. There are shopping bag hooks and a button to close the tailgate. There is no separate button to lock the car, but the car should lock as you walk away, right? Nope. I checked a number of times because I couldn't believe it, but it seems that as you walk away from the car and the tailgate is still closing, the sensor doesn't register that you left and the car remains unlocked. Mon Dieu.
The rear doors are wide and that's a plus. However, the door stoppers are too weak, so if the car is on a slight incline or if there's wind, they may shut. Not a problem if you're outside and have a place to move, more of an issue if you're getting out, like because you're a minister or something, and they shut on your leg.
It's fairly comfortable in the back. Going from the airport to the residence the president should be fine, and they can charge their electronic devices from one of the two USB ports while their coffee sits in the cup holder in the armrest. In the top trim version, you even get heated and ventilated rear seats with a massage function. The back of the front seats is finished with hard plastic, which is something I'd expect in a family minivan, not necessarily in a limousine. But let's face it, the DS9 is largely made from former PSA, now Stellantis, parts bin.
It's even more obvious in the front, where you're greeted with the gear selector lever from the Peugeot 208 and the Opel Corsa. If not for the parts sharing business, the DS9 cockpit would seem very luxurious with all this Alcantara covering the plastics. However, on top of the dash is the first place where most car journalists are going to fondle to see if the plastics are soft. And yeah, it's like Citroen C5, I guess.
Over your left knee, there are buttons which you can't really see unless you put your head down in the footwell. Especially the heated windscreen button is well concealed. Great, but the heated part is just a strip along the A-pillar, probably where the wiper will gather all the snow. So yes, at least the snow won't obstruct your visibility, but why not do the entire windscreen? This is not a C1, but a DS9. The driver's display has the DS Diamond graphics, similar to that on the BMW iX actually, but the interface is largely the same as in Citroen cars. You can change the basic modes with a roller on the steering wheel, but individual settings are on the central display.
It's great, there are some shortcut buttons here under the screen, however, they are also touch buttons. And the fact that in order to get to the heated seats, I need to tap the screen and then tap the screen again. And the same goes for the AC. No, that's just wrong.
And then there's the clock over the screen. It pops out as you turn the car on. By the way, the start-stop button is under the clock, and you need to press it really long for the car to register. You're not just another car journalist looking for something soft around the cockpit. From a distance, the clock looks interesting and expensive, but up close it just looks cheap. Also, at night the face is lit up almost the same color as the hands.
Speaking of driving at night, on the steering column there's this sensor to monitor my attention. Nothing extraordinary. BMW, Mercedes, Lexus have the same thing. The blinking effect is visible only on camera, however in the dark I can actually see the two red circles staring at me, something I don't normally see on other cars.
And during the day, my nose is reflected in the sensor. Depending on your height and driving position, you'll see anything from your torso to your forehead. I'm starting to doubt the French savoir-faire. And now the center console and 6 buttons, which have to do with doors and windows, but they all look the same. Good luck reading the icons. At least there is a place for the phone and some storage for the phone with USB ports, and perhaps I'm the only one who hits the volume rocker as I open the cubby, right? Storage under the armrest is for about 2 small bottles, the glove box is bigger than I expected, and the door pockets are large as well. The DS9 comes with a 1.6-liter turbo petrol engine. You can either get a 225 horsepower PureTech or PHEVs called the E10s 225, E10s 250 or E10s 360 4x4, the latter being all-wheel drive obviously. The E10s 225 is pretty much the same powertrain as you'll find on the hybrid Citroen C5 Aircross, and the E10s 360 is something we've seen on the Peugeot 508 PSE.
This test car is a non-hybrid PureTech 225 horsepower with an 8-speed automatic gearbox. DS claims this will do 0 to 100 km per hour in 8.1 seconds and will use 7 liters per 100 km combined. I managed less than 8.1 seconds on slightly moist tarmac, so there is potential for improvement. As far as fuel economy is concerned, 9 and a bit combined seems more realistic. However, higher fuel consumption is compensated by ride and handling. This is by no means a sports car, but for a limousine, it handles fairly sporty. The engine and the gearbox are programmed without the lag you get on most modern cars these days. Here you just press the gas pedal and off you go. There seems to be none of that pause for the computer to figure out how much CO2 you're allowed to emit today. The steering is sharp, again for a limousine, and the electric power steering is not too light and not too heavy, just right. The Citroen C6, which the DS9 replaces, weighed around 1800 kilograms. The hybrid DS9s weigh about the same, but the pure petrol version comes at just 1540 kilograms, plus whatever optional equipment, but that's still a 493 centimeter long limousine. And the suspension, this test car gets the optional DS Active Scan suspension. It's something like on the flagship Audi, BMW and Mercedes cars, probably standard in Rolls-Royce, where you have this camera that scans the road 5 meters ahead and adapts the dampers for whatever comes next. I recall having the same system on the DS7 Crossback, but the SUV felt a bit more comfortable, whereas the DS9 feels a bit stiffer. Also, something that happened a couple of times, but I wasn't able to replicate it on camera. On bumps, the suspension would knock like in many VW Group cars with adaptive suspension. It seems to be related to low temperature, and as the car and the dampers warm up during the day, the problem disappears. I'm filming this in early December, and we're seeing some sub-zero temperatures during the night. But otherwise, the car is very comfortable and very well sound insulated.
The car is also equipped with adaptive cruise control and lane keeping assist. The adaptive cruise control works well enough, but the lane keeping assist keeps prompting me too much to hold my hands on the wheel, even if I'm holding them, because it wants to make sure. So what's the infrared sensor for? The seats are comfortable, visibility is fine. The DS9 doesn't suit me personally, but I appreciate its merits. The DS9 prices start at €47,550 for the performance line plus with the PureTech engine. Add $4,000 for the Rivoli Plus top trim. The cheapest hybrid will set you back $53,000, but if you're brave with the configurator, high 70s are not impossible. This test car with options costs about €56,000. Taking into account equipment and inflation, one could risk saying this is not more than the Citroen C6 used to cost when it was new.
The DS9 is the former PSA parts bin best of. Meanwhile, I'd expect the flagship limousine to set new trends rather than recycle tech available on lesser models. However, if you're a Star Trek fan, imagine how cool it would be to say that you pilot the DS9. And how do you like the DS9? Let me know in the comment section below.
If you like my sarcastic, down-to-earth and possibly mildly amusing car reviews, join me every Friday at 3 p.m. Central European Time, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video as it helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.